Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You may be seated. The Executive Dean of the Faculty of Management, Professor Danielle van Lille, Emeritus Professor Chris Thornhill, our respondent for the evening from the University of Pretoria, and Professor Shikha Vyas-Doorgapersad, the honoured respondent, or not the respondent, but what do you say to somebody who's going to be delivering the inaugural address, but the guest of honour today? It is my pleasure and privilege to welcome you all on this auspicious and very significant occasion for the University of Johannesburg, the Professorial Inauguration of Professor Doorgapersad in the Department of Public Management and Governance in the Faculty of Management. In particular, I'd like to welcome her husband and daughter. You can watch Mum deliver inaugural address this evening, and members of her family as extended family and friends with us this evening. I'd also like to welcome members from our sister institutions and also members of the Department of Public Governance and Management in our own Faculty of Management, as well as other UJ colleagues and colleagues from the public and private sector. A professorial inauguration, such as the one that we're participating in today, is a truly significant occasion in the life of a university as an institution of learning and scholarship. It represents the formal induction of a senior member of the faculty into the ranks of the academic professoriate. The noun professor derives from the verb to profess, and the origins of to profess derives originally from the Latin professori, pro meaning before, and fatere, to confess. Thus, the original Roman meaning is to confess before the public. In the late Middle Ages, the term professor was used to refer to university teachers of the highest order. While the act was no longer a confession, rather a declaration and an exposition of one's academic discipline, the very public nature of the event remains entrenched. It is and always has been the opportunity for an eminent scholar to explain the principles, procedures, and objects of one's scholarly gaze to one's peers, members of the public, and one's family. The act of professing was a prelude to the conferring of the title of professor, a title that's conferred upon a very few and requires that one be famous for one's work, acknowledged amongst the universities in that time of Europe as being preeminent in one's particular field of inquiry. This elite group comprised the Senate, and because medieval universities were communities, the towns in which they were situated were essentially extensions of the university, providing civic services. The Senate, therefore, largely controlled the towns as well. Fortunately, modern-day professors do not have to function as city councillors. But there's more to the history of the professor. Professors frequently hold chairs in their disciplines. The medieval origins of the chair of a discipline are Muslim in origin. In this regard, the caliph himself, caliphs were generally men, would appoint a kursi or a chair in the university or madrasa. The appointment was normally for life, and the chair holder would sit literally in a chair surrounded by students. The kursi, as often referred to as the chair, like the professor, was highly esteemed and for good reasons. Perhaps the most shining example of Islamic learning in Africa was the establishment of the University of Timbuktu in Mali in the 12th century. 9 centuries ago, this seat of learning had 25,000 students from Africa and the Mediterranean. So from two distinct medieval university traditions, one steeped in Islam and the other steeped in Christianity, an outstanding academic elite was established. Ladies and gentlemen, the situation is no different today. As a leading institution of higher learning, the University of Johannesburg goes to great lengths to make professorial appointments that will ensure the status and quality of the university is maintained for the next generation. Our professors are truly significant members of our university. As members of Senate, they guide our decision-making around core academic affairs. They represent their disciplines both within and outside of the university, in academic contexts and in broader professional and social contexts. Our professors offer academic leadership. They are responsible for nurturing young faculty and supporting them as they mature into the next generation of scholars. And they ensure that we offer our students a quality learning experience. All of this, of course, requires qualities that are addition to the erudition which we primarily associate with being a professor. It requires professors and academic leaders who also show a human face, who combine academic leadership with concern and care for their colleagues and students. And I know that this is something in which Professor Doorgapersad does excel. The University of Johannesburg has embarked upon a strategy of significantly enhancing its global reputation and stature. Our university's 2025 Strategic Excellence and Stature Project talks about the need to allocate considerable resources aimed at attracting the finest researchers and teachers from all parts of the globe. In its first submission and second submission for ranking in the QS system, UJ has been placed in the top 4% of universities globally, and we aspire to increase our position dramatically in the years ahead. At the forefront of this endeavor is a group of those who lead the academic disciplines, those whose skills in research, teaching, and mentoring are exemplary and who justly deserve the title of professor. Professor Doorgapersad, we look forward to what undoubtedly will be a presentation of great erudition and scholarship. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attendance today.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Professor Anjina Parek. Honored guests, it's my privilege tonight to introduce you to our speaker, Professor Shikha Vyas-Doorgapersad. She was born in India on the 6th of November, and I'll just simply say not too long ago. She married a South African in 2001, and Nishu are also with us tonight, and she has one delightful daughter, Ansara. So she went to school at Diana Public School and received a bachelor's degree in science from the University of Johannesburg. She obtained a Master's of Arts in 1993 and a Master's of Philosophy in 1994 with a specialization in public administration at the University of Rajasthan. She obtained her Doctor of Philosophy in Public Administration at the same university in 1998 under the supervision of Professor Ramesh K. Arora. In 1988, she started her career as a lecturer at the International College for Girls, Jaipur in India, where she was involved with undergrad lecturing in public administration. She published in a number of Indian journals and was actively involved in social media, such as the publication of newspaper articles. She immigrated from India to South Africa in 2001, and in 2004 joined the University of Zululand as a lecturer in the Department of Public Administration and Political Science. In 2007, she was appointed as a senior lecturer in the Department of Public Management and Administration at the Vaal Triangle campus of the Northwest University. There, she was promoted to an associate professor in 2011 at the Northwest University, and she joined the University of Johannesburg as a professor within the Department of Public Management and Governance in 2015. Shikha specializes in the public sector with an interest in gender issues in public management. She has published extensively in national, international accredited and peer-reviewed journals. She has published 15 individual articles and co-published 25 articles with academics from African and North American countries. She has contributed 7 chapters to international books. She is the author of 2 books published in India and editor of 3 international books published by Taylor and Francis and Routledge in New York respectively. She has read papers at international conferences in Japan, Indonesia, Namibia, Mauritius, Uganda, Botswana, Brazil, Abu Dhabi, and virtually in Greece, Montenegro, and Italy. She served as guest editor for the Journal of Public Affairs in America and as associate editor for the International Journal of Interdisciplinary Social Sciences and the International Journal of Environmental, Cultural, Economic, and Social Sustainability, both published in Australia. She also acts as reviewer to many South African journals. 3 doctorates and 18 master students completed their studies under her supervision. She was awarded with several distinctions as the recipient of the Institutional Teaching and Learning Excellence Award and the Research Excellence Award at the Vaal Triangle campus of the Northwest University. And tonight, as I said earlier, we are blessed here with the presence of her husband Anish and her daughter Apsara. And may I wish you a formidable Diwali tomorrow as you have time to celebrate with your family and not having a wife and a mother worried about her inaugural speech. Thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, I call upon Professor Doorgapersad to deliver inaugural address.
Honorable Deputy Vice Chancellor, Executive Dean, colleagues, family, and friends, I am honored to address you on this auspicious occasion. In this inaugural address today, I am sharing my research journey in a brief timeline. Here it begins. It was 6 November 1993. The place was Jaipur, then a small underdeveloped town in India where I was born. I was celebrating my 23rd birthday and had an argument with my mother. My neighbors shared their concerns with my mother, convincing her to think about my age. You know the good thing about Eastern society, that you do not have to worry about yourself. Your neighbors fulfill that responsibility. Anyway, the structured societal conversation that took place with my mother was, your daughter is getting old and must get married soon. So my mother tried to convince me. And the emotional punch was, Shikha, you must understand that I am the only breadwinner. And I want to prove to society that I have raised you well without the support of anyone. I now want you to get married so I can shut people's mouth. In my heart, I was very grateful to my mother, who despite being disadvantaged by poor conditions, sacrificed her life in order for her children to get a better education. Nonetheless, I did not buy her idea that day. That was not the birthday gift I was longing for. What I wanted was to educate myself further and obtain a PhD degree. The only focus aim of my life was to become an educator at university level. Well, this intention was encoded in my DNA. So at that moment, I gained all my strength and rebelled against the regular norms of Indian society. I gave an ultimatum to my mother that I would not get married until I get my PhD and started my career as a lecturer. I wanted to be highly educated, empowered, and independent. Today, on the occasion of my professorial inauguration, I can proudly assert that I achieved what I desired with such passion. Despite the fact that I was born in a male-dominated society, I was always progressive in thinking and wanted to evolve my personal identity. I wanted to demonstrate my existence and refused to live a silent life. My intention was not to compete with the masculine gender, but to express my individual existence and claim citizenship as a woman. The universe supported my determination and connected my soul to my husband and moved me to South Africa. My marriage was a moment of my karmic transition. It was a born-again departure of a mindset from visualizing zero to a circle symbolizing infinity. My new journey in South Africa had adaptation challenges, but the road to my life goal was comfortable due to the support of my husband's liberal beliefs. He acknowledges and respects my individual self. This security in my relationship helped me find my existence in a new culture, and people of this rainbow country embraced me. I found a job in 2004 that set my career path, met wonderful colleagues and friends, and I became a South African citizen by heart. I am absorbed by the spirit of this land. The Indian philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, meaning the whole world is one family, merged with the South African Ubuntu, meaning I am what I am because of who we all are. I started my academic career at the University of Zululand and then moved to Northwest University. My initial observations at my previous places of employment amazed me with some reality shocks. In the East, gender relations are clearly witnessed primarily within households. A girl child awakens every morning with structured tasks, obviously meant to learn household chores. She then spends days of her life learning to be a good listener because she is not able to speak her own truth. Her mute soul then sleeps with this realization that being born as a girl is a karmic debt that she needs to repay. And this awareness, to some extent, becomes her life philosophy. In contrast to my personalized thought patterns, I was taken aback when I began to encounter that female students in South Africa, more or less, struggle with the same emotional, physical, and psychological challenges and were lacking in self-confidence. They carried a submissive personality with no individuality. I also witnessed gender-based dominance in decision-making structures with institutions that demand equality. This was a disturbing, frightening, and worrying understanding that motivated me to take some conscious decisions. One fine day, I meditated with mindfulness on my reflections and comprehended that my personal and professional experiences in the East and West gave me a diverse understanding, confirming that gender disparities exist in both cultures and contexts. Yes, women are still fighting for their identity, screaming for their rights, struggling for respect, and challenging men for equality. Claiming self-worth is not an easy aspiration and requires strength. I started writing about women issues as an emerging researcher, thinking it would lead to a transformation of society with prevailing stereotyped thinking. I once presented my work at a national conference where the session was attended by a majority of young male delegates. They were uncomfortable and thereafter commented that you are interfering with our traditional values. Amazingly, we honor International Women's Day, but many households do not honor women in our own homes because the set rules regarding gender relations in society that men must receive honor and women must serve their men still prevail. As a woman, I am taking responsibility through my research to bring awareness of gender equality in society and in the workplace. It is a contributory journey aiming to bring gender transformation to public policies and social reform. My research therefore maintains a non-sexist approach and focuses on three concepts: gender, gender mainstreaming, and gender equality. In recent years, Africa have been increasing pressure to demonstrate their relevance as citizens demand better service delivery. To respond to the numerous calls for efficiency improvements in service delivery, government design and implement a number of public policies. While these public policies aim at addressing service delivery problems, the question of how gender dynamics are used to shape public policy management is less understood, as it has not been subject to scholarly attention amongst policy analysts. The challenges faced in different conceptual gender categories differ and ought to be considered in public policy formulation, implementation, and review. While a significant amount of scholarly work has been directed to the broad subject of gender in Africa, there remains a dearth of research on gender dynamics, specifically relating to public policy management. Studies that take a comparative angle on the subject are not a common feature on the continent. The subfield of policy analysis in the discipline of public management is associated with the design, formulation, implementation, and evaluation of public policy. The irony is that most of the public policy implementation processes are gender biased. In addition, public policy processes lack gender-based representation and participation that result in ineffective implementation of gender equality. In examining the status of gender equality and women empowerment, I mostly utilize a qualitative approach to provide greater, deeper, and comprehensive understanding of gender phenomena in my research. My research aimed to seek answers to concerns such as: what is the magnitude of gender awareness in political decision making in municipalities? To what extent are gender equality policies implemented at grassroots level? Is South African local government committed enough to incorporate gender equality in poverty reduction strategies? And are municipalities acknowledging the need to empower women? These concerns constitute arguments on gender issues and the significance of a normative approach that supports public participation as a form of transformation. The answers to these concerns are imperative to understand the level of gender mainstreaming and gender inequalities that exist on professional, societal, and personal levels. The emergence of feminist approaches entails several feminist ideologies that developed over time. For example, liberal feminism, anarchist feminism, and Marxist feminism. These ideologically driven measures paved the way towards a realization of gender equality initiatives to depict feminist movements. These developments include the Women in Development approach, the Women and Development approach, the Gender and Development approach. Underpinned by the feminist theory, I adopted an empowerment approach as a theoretical framework for my research. Notably, it is not feminism that is divisive in African societies, but patriarchy. Furthermore, feminism is not a betrayal of African values. Rather, dismissing feminism as un-African is a betrayal of African women. My research evaluated these feminist approaches in the South African context and deduced that feminist movements resulted in policy frameworks, but in practice, the situation is still challenging. According to the recently published news in The Star dated 19 October 2015, the controversial Traditional Courts Bill is on its way back to Parliament after months of disagreement between the government and various interest groups over its discrimination against women. Gender groups criticize the original version of the bill as being oppressive towards women. My research was conducted at the Buffalo City Metropolitan Municipality, the City of Tshwane Metropolitan Municipality, the Sedibeng District Municipality, the Bojanala Platinum District Municipality, the Mfuleni Local Municipality, and the Ndlambe Local Municipality. It was found that females in each race group, Africans, colored, Indian, and white, were underrepresented at the top and senior management levels. The participants confirmed that the lack of gender equality implementation contributes to social, cultural, economic, and political barriers. The findings also established that there was a gender disparity in terms of management positions, male versus female employment ratios, and appropriate training programs for women empowerment. The situation at organizational level corresponds with a stigmatic societal mentality. The majority of participants agreed that this stereotyped way of thinking dominates South African society. In many households, women are still not allowed to be professionals, and they earn less money than men. In the political and policy-making context, I conducted several desktop studies exploring gender mainstreaming in water resource management, integrated development planning processes, and poverty reduction strategies. These are crucial areas that demand women equality. For example, historically, socially, and economically, women in many societies must travel long distances, often in unfavorable conditions, to carry home containers of water on their heads for drinking and domestic purposes. Women are overrepresented in these tasks, but underrepresented in decision-making processes in water management. My research was also focused on the transferal of gender responsibility from carrying water to carrying responsibility for water. With regard to public policy-making processes, women as community members are still restricted to perform their household responsibilities. This nature of thinking requires transformation of a mentality that is regulated by social, family, and cultural norms. The findings furthermore established that the stereotype mentality, whereby it is acceptable for men to dominate women in society, still prevail. This mentality results in ego conflict and a lack of support from the male counterparts in the workplace. This situation can have a ripple effect, whereby lack of gender-based tasks lead to gender-biased policy outcomes. Even official documents such as Integrated Development Plan Guide, annual reports, and IDP documents of various municipalities report that gender issues are all about composite social, economic, cultural, and political relationships and are not necessarily easily understood in the policy-making processes. Municipalities are struggling to incorporate gender into their existing structures due to the enormous challenges linked to stereotyped social mindset, a biased institutional culture, and also a lack of political will. My research identified gaps in the operational aspects of local governance to implement gender equality in policy-making processes and prompted me to develop some practical tools for improvement. These tools led to my development of a gender-sensitive municipal assessment tool, GSMAT, that identifies gaps in municipal operational capabilities and social empowerment demands. At institutional level, the GSMAT provides a framework to assess the organizational structures, emphasizing what do we deliver. At departmental level, it evaluates how do we deliver. At individual level, it assesses how do we improve gender-based participation in policy-making processes. I furthermore realized that there are challenges related to gender equality and its impact on human resource development. So I developed a classification called Gender Equality in Human Resource Development that discusses gender-based capacity building at institutional, departmental, and individual levels. HR decisions regarding the above aspects require strategic support, now create additional concerns. For example, what is the advantage of gender awareness in policy-based decision-making processes? Are there any initiatives in place to capacitate women in order for them to participate in policy-making processes? The answers to these questions in my research led to the development of a gender mainstreaming in IDP processes checklist, that may assist policymakers to establish gender mainstreaming in the policymaking processes as a required output. My research revealed that there is also a need to develop a tool to promote women's involvement in local government policymaking processes to realize the empowerment approach. An empowerment approach also demands the representation of women in poverty reduction strategies is imperative for sustainable development. Poverty reduction cannot happen effectively without reducing gender inequality, and thus gender inequalities defeat the whole purpose of poverty reduction. To find solutions to these issues, my research developed a gender-based economic empowerment for sustainable development tool. Because UJ is moving towards Pan-Africanized thinking, I started conducting comparative research with academics and scholars from various African universities. Some of the areas that are explored and published are gender-based procurement practices in South Africa and Kenya, gender equality in the water sector in South Africa and Uganda, the status and political participation of women in the Democratic Republic of Congo, to name a few. Some of the gender mainstream issues under consideration for further research include comparative studies with Ghana, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Nigeria. I have also registered a non-profit organization called Love Cash Projects. The abbreviation Love Cash stands for Love, Care, and Share. The aim is to create opportunities for gender-based capacity building, benefiting the disadvantaged groups of society. The work under my NPO will also assist me to get empirical-based results, whereby I will be able to measure the impact of capacity building initiatives on the social economic evolvement of individual households. My aim is to advance gender research at national, regional, and continental levels, and ultimately at the global level. In order to achieve these aims, I have developed networks within academics inside and outside the boundaries of South Africa. It is indeed a continuous process requiring broader collaboration. This is just a beginning. There are a variety of issues that require consideration. For example, gender-based involvement in agenda setting, representation in stakeholder analysis, participation in budget session, civic awareness session, political affiliation, to state a few. The practical reasons restricting these wide-ranging standpoints of gender mainstreaming are because there is indeed a lack of data, insufficient empirical research to make informed decisions, too few financial and human resources to implement women empowerment activities, and so forth. Further research in this area, however, may assist me to gather more in-depth dimensions, appropriate perspectives, and to provide comparative best practices to comprehensively incorporate gender-based indicators in policy-making processes. This is nonetheless an issue of continuous debate, comparative research, and social reform. In conclusion, I salute a few women who are my inspiration and who showed other women the road to empowerment, progression, and advancement at both personal and professional levels. These are the women who transformed the expression of feminism. They are Mother Teresa, whose soul ascended in the country where my soul was descended, in India. Oprah Winfrey, Indira Gandhi, Helen Keller, Rosita Riveter, Betty Friedan, Bell Hooks, Coretta Scott King, Maya Angelou, Malala Yousafzai, to name a few. Did I say Angelina Jolie? Before I conclude, I would like to thank a few people who made my academic and professional journey a memoir to remember. I thank the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Management and his staff, my colleagues in my department, my colleagues in my field, my students, my family and friends, my PhD promoter, Professor Rameshki Arora, for crafting my personality, Professor Crystal Oriokombe, who is a great mentor, Professor Chris Thornhill, who is my role model. all those people who crossed my path and taught me valuable life lessons, and all the trials and errors of my life, which helped me advance myself as a good human being. And this is my epilogue. I uphold that I am a proud woman and mother and want to be reborn as a woman. I affirm that I deserve equal opportunities, recognition, benefits, appreciation, and respect because it matters. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed an honor to respond to Professor Vyas-Doorgapersad's lecture. She commenced the lecture with an overview of the existing national and international policy framework within which gender issues are addressed. She argued that gender is accepted as a crucial factor for the development of society, but that the reality is that many of the lofty policies are not implemented as intended. She made reference to the various movements and ideologies which promoted the awareness of women as indispensable components of government's endeavors to curb poverty. The African situation was highlighted to explain the difference between Western feminism and African feminism. With this distinction, she also emphasized the need for the recognition of cultural factors in addressing gender imbalances in society. The fact that feminism was not identified as the divisive element in African society, but patriarchy, is of particular importance in all the attempts to obtain gender equality. Professor Vyas-Doorgapersad provided a summary of her research into gender issues as their focus area. An impressive amount of work had been done in this regard. She has proven her capacity and commitment to do research in all spheres of government. A remark that struck me particularly was that gender responsibility should be viewed as the carrying of responsibility rather than the carrying of water. Unequivocally, this also set the scene for a new evaluation of the role of women. The innovative approach followed by Professor Vyas-Doorgapersad is clearly exemplified by the development of mechanisms such as gender-sensitive municipal assessment tool, gender mainstreaming in IDB processes checklist, and gender-based representation in local government for measuring institutional capacity. These are valuable for any international and nationally based research interested in continuing the initial work done by the professor. She acknowledges that her research is just beginning, and she emphasized that. She identified the need for continuous research into the area of gender in policies, but in particular in the world where equity still has a long way to go, particularly in comparative research and social reform. Professor Vyas-Doorgapersad has proven in her inaugural address that she is an accomplished researcher, an academic with a sound theoretical knowledge of her area of expertise, and possesses the commitment to perform, to my mind, the three important functions of an academic. And that is, firstly, to discover new knowledge by doing research. Secondly, to conserve knowledge through articles and books. And thirdly, to transfer knowledge to new researchers and students. Professor Vyas-Doorgapersad is congratulated on a well-prepared and instructive lecturer, thereby earning herself an honored place in academia. Welcome to the academia. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you will all agree with Professor Thornhill that Professor Doorgapersad is welcome to the hallowed hall of the famous Professorial. Well, it now gives us the pleasure to robe Professor. Congratulations.
The University of Johannesburg. Rethink, reinvent.